Hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather we're having this weekend. It's inside Tennessee. John North here. We were talking infrastructure. We're going to pick up a conversation a little bit more. Don Bosch?
Sure. Tim, we were talking. I've looked at least some newspaper articles, and reputable ones, I might add, that seem to indicate Tennessee is going to get a slice of this pie, so to speak, particularly as it relates to roads, infrastructure, hard infrastructure, as well as the broadband that you just mentioned, and as well as issues that would likely involve ORNL concerning nuclear power as a power alternative. So it doesn't, when you say Tennessee was left out of it, look, I'm just troubled as you are that if the Democrats, as they are, in control, and I believe they will be, but I know others disagree, why they didn't even at least reach out to Congressman Cooper and Cohen. But I do think that there are some benefits for Tennessee. Am I incorrect in having analyzed that?
No, Tennessee will get something from it, but it's more of a trickle down. It's, when you're spending billions of dollars in New York, a state or a city for that matter, that's basically being evacuated. They're all coming down here, and they're spending more and more on things like mass transit and things that are, people are working from home now. The diametrics have changed completely. And when you look at the whole picture, though, it's just a spending boondoggle to think. It's funny, I was talking to Congressman Duncan, and he was telling me, where in the world, when did this happen? Did $1.5 trillion become the conservative plan? And that turned out to be what was considered the conservative bipartisan plan. But still, I can't vote for all this pork. I didn't under Trump's budgets, as you remember, and I haven't under this. And so I've just tried to be consistent. I propose legislation, rule changes, and hopefully in the next Congress you'll hear more about it. And I've talked to leadership about it, and we'll be more formal about it. But in Tennessee, when you pass a bill, I always talk about dealing with dog catchers. Well, dadgummit, the final bill has to deal with dog catchers. There can't be pay raises in there. And what they've done is we go through these 16-hour marathon meetings where we vote on all the amendments, and it was all out of maybe one or two amendments, and the whole 16 hours were Republican presented, but mainly because they were the same thing a Democrat had, and they just threw us a bone to say it was bipartisan. And then when you get to the final product and you see where the chairman of transportation is now not going to run again. And I've been told it's just out of frustration because of his 16 hours of meetings that we had, that they just basically gutted everything he did, and they just went in the back room and wrote the legislation so they knew they could get the votes. And that's just got to change, Don. I don't care who's in it, and I'll be pushing it extra harder. I'll be embarrassing my own party. I know that might come as a shock to some of y'all that I would embarrass the Republican Party. Susan's laughing. But the truth is I plan on pushing that forward because I don't think it's right. And you are correct. There are things in there that are good for this area. When 23% of it goes towards infrastructure and the rest is something else, I can't be for that.
Susan, go ahead.
Tim, I want to ask you about the Build Back Better bill. $2 trillion. It had things like preschool for all, tax Pell Grant increases, a lot of climate change things included in that. And it's going to be paid for, clearly, if it passes the Senate, by tax increases and increased tax enforcement. They're going to be looking at our bank accounts. You said, I think I saw this quoted at least, that President Biden lied to the country when he said his agenda had no cost. And I've seen him say that on several occasions. Talk about that and why. I know you voted against it. And do you think it's going to pass the Senate? Do you have any talk or any inside news on that?
Well, I had a Mexican dinner with Mitch McConnell last night, me and a couple of folks from Tennessee, which is kind of interesting. And I do believe that something's going to come out of the Senate. I don't know when. The Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, I don't know why they have all these fancy names, but it had a fiscal note on it. It added billions to the deficit. And maybe lying was Victor Ashe got on to me about it, and he said, Tim, don't ever say the president lied. Say he misled us or something like that. So if I offended anybody out there, I'm sorry, but he did not tell the truth. And my mama would always say, "Baby, don't ever call him, don't ever use that word for some reason. I don't know."
Funny, Tim. I never heard you say that about Trump when it was pretty clear that he lied a bunch of times.
Well, I don't know about that, Don. Now, I'm sorry, it just went through a tunnel. You broke up on me. I couldn't hear you. But
Yeah.
I know people like Don will like this bill because trial lawyers will be able to write off frivolous lawsuit expenses on their taxes, and it's a business expense. But in some areas, I think that can be issued as sort of a hunting license for some less than scrupulous attorneys. And grants amnesty to 8 million illegal immigrants. Come on. It fines businesses if they disobey the vaccine order. And the courts are throwing all those things out. 80 billion. Now, I know everybody out there has been getting calls saying, wow, I hope we get more IRS agents. And, and the left spending this $80 billion you got to realize they're going to be hiring hundreds of new IRS agents, and they're all going to have a computer. They're all going to have a desk. They're all going to have an office, and they're all going to have retirement. So think about that for a long-term effect. It'll be more than $80 billion, but they're not going after rich people. They're going to go after middle-income folks because that's their bread and butter, and that's what will happen. And we don't have that many billionaires in this country. And so I just think that this thing is totally out of whack. And, $7,500 tax credits for electric vehicles. Now, that's not helping working people because working people they're still buying pickup trucks. And they're buying used cars if they can find one right now. And in these liberal states, I know we got to go. New York and New Jersey, this SALT tax thing where they can deduct off their local taxes. That doesn't affect good people down in Tennessee. It's New Jersey and New York, and they're Democrat-controlled strongholds. Sorry, John.
Speaking of working people, I think they want another cup of coffee, and this is a good time to take a break. We will be back. You're watching Inside Tennessee on Sunday morning.